The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Are the Clippers getting Bradley Beal?
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast.
Before we get into Beal, actually, I wanted to close the book on John Collins by saying that Lawrence Frank made a comment about him, and this was the official statement by the Clippers media. He said, "This was an opportunity to address a position and a skill set that we felt needed reinforcement. John is a power forward in his prime with great athleticism who can also play small ball 5. He scores at all 3 levels, excelling in space and transition as a runner, roller, and vertical threat. He stretches the court with his shooting and helps win the possession battle with his rebounding. We're excited to add John to the group." Couldn't have said it better myself. I said all those things, a lot of those things on the episode, so we know why we went out and got John Collins. And then this is what it was about Norman Powell. He said, "Norm has been a vital part of our organization over the past 3.5 years. We want to thank him for everything he did for the Clippers on and off the court. He's a true pro. He's also an incredible scorer, efficient and prolific with a relentless work ethic. Norm is a huge reason we won 50 games last season, and we're going to miss him." That's what he said about Norm. So, great stuff from Lawrence there. He did a great job on this trade. But let's talk about Bradley Beal. So, this was the official news today on my Twitter timeline, and it was coming from our good friend of the show, Law Murray, saying that the Clippers are the likely leaders to sign Bradley Beal if he is bought out by the Phoenix Suns. Now, I've seen some people say that they're thinking it's going to be Beal getting bought out and coming to the Clips, and then CP3 going to the Suns, because then that would be a guard spot opened up. He probably won't start, because they'll probably start Jalen Green, Devin Booker, and Dylan Brooks, but he's going to be the third ball handler besides Jalen Green and Devin Booker. And with that personnel, considering like Ryan Dunn is probably your other starter in Phoenix, CP3 might be closing a lot of games in smaller lineups, especially with now that they have some big men depth with the rookie and Mark Williams. So, and I'll talk about the possibilities of getting CP3 and Beal in the next segment, but right now, just talking about Beal, how do I feel about hearing that? There's another report from Clutch Point saying that once Bradley Beal, it says once, not if, once Bradley Beal reaches a buyout agreement with the Suns, multiple playoff contending teams will have interest in him. However, Beal and the Clippers hold mutual interest, league sources told Clutch Points. Many teams are preparing for him to immediately sign with LAC. Isn't it crazy? Even though Beal's past it a little bit, like past his star days, it's crazy that like the Clippers are often front runners for players of the caliber of James Harden and Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, and like it's insane. The John Walls, the DeMarcus Cousins. I know they were on, past their primes, but it's just that never happened before. Like we weren't like that before. Nobody wanted to come to the Clippers. So Steve Ballmer, continues to make us a completely different organization. So I always try to tell people and try to tell you to keep perspective as a Clipper fan, especially if you've been here for the long haul, longer than me, or even, Lob City and on, Sterling and on, you see the difference. So, but besides that, now looking at the actual basketball side of things, I've mentioned this. I would love Bradley Beal now that Norm's gone if he agrees to come off the bench. That doesn't mean he won't end games. That doesn't mean he won't be our third leading ball handler. Because he will be. It should be Harden, Kawhi, and Brad. I'm already calling him Brad, first name. I'm preparing for it. I used to love Bradley Beal. I just think he's shown complete unseriousness like the last 5 years. I saw it in Washington. There was that 2021-22 team. They had just traded Russell Westbrook for Kuzma and KCP. They weren't, and Spencer Dinwiddie, and I heard there was a lot of like beefing internally. But Beal just averaged 31 points a game. They weren't supposed to be that bad. And I remember at the beginning of the season, they were actually good, the Wizards that year. And then when I saw them play against us and we came back from that deficit and Beal was like, looking like he wasn't even trying out there, I was like, and I went to a Wizards space and heard their fans just going off on him. And then I talked to my friend that was a Wizards fan. And he's like, I want Beal off the team. Like, it's kind of ridiculous, especially with what he's getting paid. He's not a leader. You know what I'm saying? But he wasn't when he was at his best. I wouldn't say at his best, but when he was at his most respected, I would say it was with Westbrook alongside him or with John Wall alongside him. With the Clippers, you would have Harden alongside him and Kawhi. He's a bona fide third option, which he was in Phoenix, but we have a different flavor. It's not three guys that want to work in the mid-range and score from three levels and or score first. You have a James Harden who's a pick and roll first guy. You know what I'm saying? You can argue. I don't like to say pass first because he's an attack first guy. You know what I'm saying? It's the modern point guard way. You don't come up the court and pass. He gets into his action and passes based off his scoring gravity, James Harden. So it's a much better role, in my opinion, for Brad. But I want him to come off the bench because if we start Beal, James, Kawhi, Collins, and Zoo, who is the guy that's going to take the best player on opposing teams to start games every night? And if people say Kawhi, they're missing the big picture. Never has Kawhi Leonard consistently in a season been the designated guy that goes out and guards the best player on our team the way Terrence Mann was deployed and the way Chris Dunn or Derrick Jones Jr. was this past season. No number one option in the league is doing that. So it should be no different for a guy with an injury history that's laundry list long and is on the older side of 33. He's not guarding the best player. And I know some people are going to say, well, Bradley Beal and James Harden will ease the load off of him offensively. Why do we want Kawhi Leonard's offensive load eased? Wasn't it like we wanted him shooting more in the playoffs? We wanted him to get more shots off? By the way, he's 34. He just turned 34. I don't know why I said 33. We should prepare this entire season as we play through Kawhi Leonard more so than we were playing through James Harden. Like the proportion of it has to be closer than James Harden averaging 4 minutes per game with the ball in his hands than Kawhi in the playoffs. We need Kawhi Leonard shooting 20 shots a game like he did in 2020, which I think was his best regular season as a Clipper, actually. And he's had some really good regular seasons as a Clipper. He was awesome in 2021. He was awesome in 2024. And he was awesome in 2023 in that stretch, when he came back. He's had some great, for the Clippers, all-time great Clipper regular seasons, all NBA. Like we haven't had many all NBA players in our history. It's just the thing with Kawhi is it just hasn't always translated to the playoffs because of injury with us. And this past season, I mean, it wasn't there's 5 to 10 Kawhi Leonard series you can probably put over the one we just saw, in terms of his incredible resume in the playoffs. So my point is this: Kawhi Leonard guarding the best player on a nightly basis, out of question. We don't want that. We want him to be the guy that's averaging, for me, 20 shots a game. I think 2020 was his best regular season. I truly do. He just was really the best version of himself, taking over games. He looked the most athletic in that version, and he didn't have to defer to Paul George at all. It was just sometimes Lou Williams and Trez ran their two-man game late in games, but Kawhi was the guy. He closed out that game against the Jazz early on, did a good job closing opening night against the Lakers, closed out against the Raptors. A lot of home games that he closed out really well that first season. Unfortunately, it didn't translate to the bubble in that second round. But the other candidate would be John Collins, and John Collins is not a guy that you want guarding the quick guards and point of attack. Like that's, navigating screens and doing all that. You want him around the rim, being a help defender to Zoo, as that low man. The obvious answer for me is to have Chris Dunn or Derrick Jones Jr. starting to guard the best player, and then you bring Bradley Beal and try to make him a 6th man of the year candidate. And then he'll close games a lot of times. But does Beal have I don't want to say humility, but was he willing to sacrifice that much? He won't be making enough from the Clippers to justify I need to start, but he's Bradley Beal. He's averaged 30-plus points 2 years in a row. He's objectively a better basketball player than Chris Dunn, Derrick Jones Jr., and anyone else we have, but it's about fit. I don't want to be a team that loses their defensive identity. And some people are saying, well, Chris Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr. will just come off the bench. You want both of them in off the bench. I think it's better to have them staggered a little bit, and it was fine having them both in the lineup, this year, but we had James Harden and Norman Powell with no 4-man. Like Derrick Jones Jr. was playing the 4 in our lineups, which was crazy, but they were switchable. You have to be able to, if you can stay in front of the ball these days, that's what matters. If you can stay in front of the ball, given all the advantages that offensive players have and how much the perimeter defense face-up defenders are handicapped, then you can play. Like a lot of times. I mean, I shouldn't say that because Chris Dunn, but here's the thing, right? Chris Dunn, maybe you could argue he should have played less, but he was on the court because he could guard. To me, that's always going to be valuable. If you have to choose between a guy that can guard and can't shoot versus a guy that can shoot and can't guard, I'm taking the guy that can guard. But why? That goes into more basketball philosophy things. We don't have time to talk about all that. Point is, we need him. I don't want Beal starting. Like, you might think I'm overreacting, and like we could just come off the bench with Derek and thing. But no, what if we start out games and we're getting cooked by opposing guards because Bradley Beal's guarding point of attack? I saw Bradley Beal guarding point of attack against Minnesota in the playoffs. And yes, he wasn't doing a horrific job, but if Bradley Beal's your best defender and he's guarding the best Anthony Edwards, they got swept. Like, it's not like every serious team in this league. Every serious team has one guy in the starting lineup designated to guard the other team's best ball handler. Aaron Nesmith for the Pacers. The Thunder have two. It's mainly Lou Dort, though. And then they have Jalen Williams. And then they have Kaysen Wallace and Alex Caruso off the bench. And we wonder why they won a championship. And then you go to the teams that lost, for example, in the conference finals. The Knicks have OG and Mikal Bridges. The Minnesota Timberwolves have Jaden McDaniels. You go to the teams that lost in the second round. The Cavs have Max Strus on the weaker side, but he's still a guy that's better than any. He would be a better defender. He's not better than Kawhi Leonard defensively, but he would be better than what we have if we start Beal. And then you've got, the Nuggets have Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. They're no slouches at all. Look at the job that Christian Brown did on James Harden and what Aaron Gordon was able to do on Kawhi Leonard besides game 2. So it's a real thing. So in my opinion, the thing is I'm really down for Beal. It seems like it's very likely to happen if there's the buyout. But for me, if he's coming with the demand of I need to start, see ya. See ya. You can go to Milwaukee. Like, we can't have those kind of egos in the locker room, especially with Beal. His track record the last couple of years isn't great.
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups all summer long, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out. It makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I am part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Scott Frost couldn't stay quiet about the Huskers on Tuesday at Big 12 Media Days in Frisco, Texas. He seemed to want to stay quiet about Nebraska, steered clear of it when speaking at the podium at the Big 12 Media Days event, said on the ESPN set that he had a little, quote, detour between his stints at UCF. Then he went into a conference room with a couple of reporters from The Athletic, Chris Vanini and David Ubben, and now everyone is talking about Scott Frost again and the ugliness that exists between him and his alma mater. Yeah. Connor, your thoughts?
So should we just lay this whole thing out, the quotes first? Because like you said, what he said on the stage, wasn't bad. As we predicted yesterday in the show,
fine.
He's going to get asked about it. He's going to make some sort of glancing reference to it, and try not to talk about it. But then, like you said, the day goes on, you get asked enough about it from various different people. And, then he said, right, he didn't want to talk about the last place, just same way he did in his opening press conference at UCF, referred to Nebraska as the last place, which once again, weird.
Just a little smug, yeah.
Weird, but I don't really have an issue with it. And I'll get to my real issue with this in a second, but let's get to the quotes.
Well, let me set it up and say, because I think there are some people out there, and I've caught a little bit of this on social media or in comments from our articles at The Athletic. Like, why don't you media just respect him and stop asking when he says he doesn't want to talk about it? Well, this is Scott's first opportunity at UCF in front of national media. He hasn't done a big tour or had all kinds of people coming into Orlando. His press conference there when he was reintroduced was in front of media from Florida who wanted to talk about Central Florida. So this was like the first test, and he was not coaxed and prodded. The quote that we're going to read here in a second came when Chris and David, and I have listened to the audio of this, asked Frost about his decision back in 2017 and how hard it was to leave UCF. Not necessarily can you talk about Nebraska, just remember that game.
Yep.
That game. Chris said, I was on the field at that game against Memphis, the double overtime game. And at the time, you knew, correct, that you were going to have to make this hard decision. And then Frost said, I always said I would never leave unless it was someplace you could go and potentially win a national championship. And, I got tugged in a direction to go try to help my alma mater. And I didn't really want to do it. It wasn't a good move. And I'm lucky that I have an opportunity to get back to a place where I was a lot happier.
Yeah. He did. I mean, for the record, there was a lot of people, this is well documented. There was a lot of people who were saying, hey, look, man, you kind of, it's the right time. It's time for you to do this. And, this feels like the right moment for you to be the head coach at Nebraska. To which he agreed to and willingly walked into the Nebraska job. And as we've mentioned many, many times, it didn't have to be bad, but it was. But clearly Scott thinks that it was other factors that made his experience at Nebraska not as good as it could have been. So just to be clear here, I am not mad at Scott Frost because he said things about Nebraska and I feel the weird need to like blindly defend Nebraska. I mean that because I feel like there's two sets of people. I'm not sure, but people are like, man, don't talk about Nebraska that way. You can't talk about Nebraska that way. Otherwise, whatever. That stuff doesn't bother me. People could say whatever. He could say whatever he wants.
Right. There's the don't disrespect us camp.
I am mad that he won't take any responsibility for and it's really not that I'm mad, it's that I'm disappointed. It's that I'm frustrated. I want him to mature. I want him to take ownership. I want that for him, but he's clearly not going to do it. I'm rooting for him to wake up. I'm rooting for him to kind of understand, have a more clear understanding of how exactly it went. We weren't inside the walls of when he was here, and I'm sure it was difficult, and he ran into a lot of things that were definitely out of his control. But I would really like to hear him say, man, that was a different version of me. That was 7-8 years ago, and I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And maybe looking back in retrospect, I wasn't ready or something like that. But
even if you don't believe that, say it. Just own it, man. Yeah. Like you were 16-31. You went 5-22 in one-score games. It was one of, if not the most disappointing tenures for a football coach in this century of major college football. It's hard to find anything that had more build up and fell flat. Very, very few positive moments, good wins in that stretch. So good players. There were people and good people who came through, but they were never able to put it together. And that has to reflect on the person in charge. And when you're a leader like that and you continue on in your career to go lead another program, it reflects well on you as a coach if you are accountable, if you stand up and own your failures in the same way that you do your successes. And I think that's what you and a lot of other people are looking for from Scott in this moment.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care what he said about Nebraska. Obviously his relationship with Nebraska is always going to be strained. I think it'll be less strained once he just kind of, wakes up and sees it, a different way. The way that everybody else seems to see it. But maybe he goes down to UCF on the second stint and has success, and then he'll be able to say, at the end of it, maybe he probably won't, touch it this way, but at the end of that, he'll say, well, look, I was a great coach here the first time, I was a great coach here the second time, and I wasn't a good coach at Nebraska. So what does that mean? Does that mean I'm sometimes not a good coach, or is that a poor reflection on Nebraska? Everyone will say, oh, well, that's probably a poor reflection on Nebraska. But so we don't really, like he will be able to have that, plausible deniability at the end of it. And he will be able to say, hey, look, this isn't my fault. But I just wish there was a little bit of like, hey, I could have done some things. I wish I would have done some things a little bit differently.
So the Spurs building the right roster around Victor Wembanyama.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast.
As the offseason is, somewhat in its infancy, the Spurs have been making some addition. Obviously, Dylan Harper in the draft. You got the big man Cornette. Carter Bryant. Now, are they done putting together a roster? Probably not, but we'll see how the offseason continues. But at this point, are they starting to build the right roster around Victor Wembanyama? Yeah, we're going to be discussing that, get into some Spurs news. We're going to pick one fan comment today and so much more. Let's go to bring in our guest to tackle this topic. He is back, everybody. Mr. Matt Guzman. He's with Spurs on Sports Illustrated. Make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN, who is going to Las Vegas. Apparently he's going to come back a richer man too, because I heard, you always win at the tables, Matt. You win at roulette, everything, right?
Absolutely. I bet it all in black, and so far I'm 100% successful. So I may go do it again.
There you go. And every time I've gone to the Vegas Summer League, and you get the downtime, I'm like, just play one or two hands, don't go crazy. And I go crazy every single time. Every single time. Where are you staying at?
I mean, it's hard to say no. Yeah, I'll be on the Strip. I'm at the Vidara Hotel this time. I was at the Park MGM last time 2 years ago. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, let me tell you my first ever Las Vegas Summer League. Now, this was way back in the day, back when Vegas Summer League wasn't a thing. Like, it was not a thing to go to. It was just whatever. I found a great spot. I'm looking at the review. Well, not the review, more like the location where it is to UNLV in the Thomas and Mack Center. I'm like, perfect. And they had literally a like the city bus that would just drive you, like not even like a 5-minute drive. I'm like, perfect. I'm gonna get it. It was the Hooters Hotel. That's where I stayed. It was the Hooters Hotel. It's no longer there anymore, but it's off the strip.
Crazy.
But that was the closest hotel to UNLV Thomas and Mack Center, and I took it. I remember splitting it with a friend of mine, and I forgot about the deposit you got to put on before you even get to the room. So I had to eat into my extra savings and just only get that back when I'm leaving. So thanks a lot to Vegas, but you're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun. Excuse me. You're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be packed, so just be ready.
Yeah,
but
I'm expecting it to.
He said, I remember back in the day, man, you used to be able to get on the court. I mean, just sit on the freaking bench with these guys. Again, that's when the NBA was just desperate for any attention to give to the Summer League to build it up. But those days are long gone. But nevertheless, Matt, have fun. Be careful out there. Get to see Dylan Harper play one game. It'll be fun, right?
Yep, that's the goal. Hopefully he does play. We'll see.
All right, everybody. Once again, make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN. More on Spurs on Sports Illustrated later on this episode of Locked On Spurs. But Matt, you're here to ask the question: are the Spurs going in the right direction as far as building a roster for Wemby heading into next season? So you heard in the intro, from Harper to Bryant to Cornette. Like they're going to do some moves in the future. Do you think they're going in the right direction to building that solid roster around Wemby?
I do. Yeah. And I think we talked about it a little bit before the episode. Like, there are several ways of looking at that question, or, different ways you can kind of interpret it. And in my head, when you put it in context with where the Spurs have been since getting Victor Wembanyama, I think that they are moving in the right direction. It was very clear last season that they needed a backup big man. Whether they bring Charles Bassey back or somebody else still on that veteran minimum, we don't know what's going to happen. But at the very least, they went out and they signed a 4-year guy in Luke Cornett, somebody who, excelled with Boston, who is 7 feet tall, has a wingspan, is a very good interior rim defender. They absolutely went and addressed the need that they had. With Carter Bryant, they kind of fell into him a little bit, which we talked about a few weeks ago, but nevertheless, he addresses that need of shooting. Dylan Harper, you add another number 2, number 1 caliber talent. Dylan Harper is one of those guys where, if it weren't for Cooper Flagg, or, maybe if he was 2 years ago, if it weren't for Victor Wembanyama, he might be number 1. So I think overall this offseason has been really strong for San Antonio in terms of, taking where they were or where they were last season and getting better. And I think that that's honestly how I take the question. And so I think they're doing the right things, and I think it's been good to see.
Yeah, I'm with you. So far, so good. Are there holes? Yes, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But you like the direction they're going now. They got shot creators, so they don't have to worry about Victor just trying to do everything on the offensive end. From De'Aaron Fox, there's some offensive help. From Castle, we know he's going to bring some offensive help. You also have a just switchable guys that you can throw around Wemby. If you need a 3-and-D guy out there with him, you hopefully that will Carter Bryant turn into. We'll see how that turns out when the season starts. If he needs just slashers, to get to the rim because he's getting double, triple teamed, he has them with Castle, Fox, and looks like more than likely Harper, not to mention Sohan and Keldon. So there's a lot of pieces around him to help up offensively, so he doesn't have to carry the burden. Now let's go shift it defensively. I think he has enough defensive weapons around him so far. Castle, just shined last year as the defensive perimeter guy, so check. Sohan, we know what he can do. He can just be a pest, get under the skin, so check. But do you think that's where perhaps he needs more help on the defensive end? Obviously I didn't bring up Cornette, there's that, but why does it feel like that's the area he needs more help with?
Honestly, the funniest thing about it all, it might seem like he needs more defensive help just because he hasn't won a Defensive Player of the Year award yet.
Right.
And I think, extenuating circumstances have kind of come in the way of both times, both years. And that said, I do think that defensively the Spurs are stronger when you compare it to their offensive side at the moment. And it's just because of Castle, and he's expected to take, another leap next season. Sohan is continuing to get better. You add Luke Cornett, who can kind of guard the rim specifically. I'm not going to call him an all-world defender, but he has a very good, presence right near the rim in the restricted area. And then you have Victor, who kind of fills in the gaps everywhere else. And so I think that, this team is built very strong on the defensive end. And, like we said, there's still options to add other players, and that is likely going to be a key factor in players that the Spurs are going to look to go get or go after or trade for, and I think that that's something that they to watch out for. But I guess to me, it might just be because he hasn't gotten the one award that he's been waiting to win since being drafted to the NBA.
Yeah, should have gotten it his rookie season, everybody. I think he should have gotten it then. But nevertheless, no, you're right. And I may be nitpicking here, but it just feels like defensively, perhaps, I guess, maybe I'm looking at this more defensive wings. That makes sense too, because we know Carter Bryant will hopefully turn into that. We'll see what happens. But Keldon, we've seen he gets burned a few times. Same thing with Devin. It feels like that position, maybe I should say, he get a little more beefing up. But nevertheless, though, we like the direction they're going. What I think the wild card in all this too is something we didn't bring up is the new head coach, Mitch Johnson. I think he factors into this whole constructing a roster, which does include a coaching staff, to build around Wemby moving forward.
Yeah, well, we've already seen some of the moves that San Antonio's gone for, to open the offseason, bringing in Corliss and Sean Sweeney. I think, we're going to see a little bit more of Mitch's play style this upcoming season, because last year, he was trying to adjust to a role that he had never had before. He didn't have much preparation time besides, being told before Game 5 that, hey, you're going to coach. And so I think having a full off season, being inducted as the official head coach. Everybody is operating around him as the head coach now. I think that we're going to see a little bit of we're going to see different rotations. I know that was a big gripe of a lot of people last season. We're going to see some different ways that Victor is utilized. We're going to see different ways that Castle gets involved, especially with Harper and Fox to deal with as well. And so I think, when it comes to Mitch Johnson, we don't really know what it looks like because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen Mitch Johnson as a head coach yet. But, from the time he spent with the organization, to last season, getting a chance to get that experience, I think that he's going to start finding a way that he feels best, utilizing Victor Wembanyama. And, at that point, you go from there.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Look, they're saving you money already.
Anthony Davis, what are our expectations for him after this new injury surgery? I think the biggest news today is that Shams Charania, kind of out of nowhere, which I guess this is going to be the norm with Anthony Davis sometimes. Shams Charania reports Dallas Mavericks All-Star Anthony Davis underwent a procedure to repair a detached retina he suffered during the season. Sources tell ESPN Davis played through multiple hits to the face last year. He is expected to be healthy for next training camp. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not a doctor. Talk to some that are. And this is weird. This seems weird to me. A detached retina can be as benign as some blurry vision and just some uncomfortability in your eye. It can be all the way up to blindness. There's a spectrum of what this could be in so many different ways. I reached out to Brian Suderer, who does the great YouTube channel. He's a sports medical doctor that we have on all the time, and he said it is weird that it's happening now, that they're doing this procedure now. But he said it could just be a delayed diagnosis. They could not have known. It may not have been as serious, that kind of stuff. It is a very strange thing. Somebody in our Locked On Maps listener reached out to us via text and said, I used to work in an eye clinic. If it was actually detached during the season, he should have gotten taken care of because more hits can make it worse. So that's not great. But he said that it's not a terribly painful surgery. You have to lay down on your face down for X amount of time. He said, I've seen people stay face down for over 2 weeks.
Just never moving?
I guess.
Oh my God.
Because you have to keep your eyes looking at
Shielded?
the ground.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to stay face down for over 2 weeks. That is absolutely insane. What would you even do for 2 weeks? You just hold up with an ankle right now and you're going crazy a little bit.
I mean, that sounds actually terrible because I imagine they don't want you watching TV. They don't want you doing any of that stuff. If you think about it, they probably don't want you looking at any bright lights.
If you're dealing with that right now, and if you're Anthony Davis, you can listen to the audio program on Apple, Spotify.
That's true. I'd be listening to the podcast of topics I didn't even care about.
YouTube Music, all that kind of good stuff. But with Anthony Davis, though, it's interesting. You want to wildly speculate and be like, well, that's why he's been struggling to shoot from three. It's like he had struggles last season. But I think to me, what I took away from this is Anthony Davis did put it all out on the line last year. Played through injuries, tried to come back early. It's admirable to see him do that for this franchise that he just got dropped into, didn't ask for it, didn't ask for all the stuff that came with it, with him being in that trade and all that. And honestly, respect the guy because dang, he put it all out on the line. This is another way where he probably had some uncomfortability with his eye, didn't really know what it was, and just kept playing through it.
Yeah, I mean, this is why, I've got a ton of respect for the dude. He thrust it into a impossible to win situation for him. And, I thought he played well, and I'm excited to see him as a member of the Mavericks moving forward. It's not his fault. He didn't make this trade happen or anything like that. So I never really appreciated some of the stuff I saw going his way. Never really felt fair to me whatsoever. So yeah, I mean,
we knew with the stomach thing that he had, the abdominal thing that he was dealing with. Him, you know, it's an interesting thing because, you know, Lakers fans have even told me this, that he gets hurt a lot. Yes, he misses time. Yes, he goes down with apparent injuries, you know, frequently during games. But he does play through injuries, and he does try to be out there, and he does, you know, go 100% to get out on the floor. So I've never really doubted that. And this one's just interesting because the reporting on it. You know, I just think Shams is usually sensationalist with this type of stuff. You know, remember what was it? The Derek Lively injury. Didn't he all but say he was out for the rest of the season? Or Exum? I forgot. One of the Mavs injuries. He said he was done for the season, and then
it was. I think it was Exum where we just expected him to not play, and then all of a sudden he was back again. So
right. So and then you had the Aaron Gordon grade 2 hamstring strain, and then he played the next day. So I think he can be a little sensationalist with this stuff because my understanding is if it was a full detached retina that happened during the season, that they would have had to have gotten it fixed within days, or else you're talking about full blindness in the eye entirely. Is how I was seeing it described.
Do you think shooting with one eye is different than shooting with both your eyes functioning?
Have you ever done that?
Your depth perception is all messed up.
Depth perception is terrible. I mean, it's. I mean, who knows? Maybe he comes out next year to shooting lights out, and it's like, I just couldn't really see that
would be nuts. That would be nuts. He goes 40% 3-point shooter. But if he shoots 40% from 3, honestly, the Mavericks are title contenders.
Okay, if Anthony Davis shoots 40% from 3 on the season, I'll donate $1,000 to a charity of Anthony Davis' choice.
I'll double it.
There you go.
To Anthony, we'll donate it to Comedy Central for Anthony Davis's next prank war special.
Mind you, his career high from 3 is 34%.
What was it in the bubble playoffs?
Bubble playoffs, it was 38. But I mean, still,
we're getting there.
Bubble playoffs was the mid range. The mid range was like automatic.
It was, and that's the swing skill that I think is interesting for him. But yeah, with Anthony Davis, I just think that's my takeaway is just we'll see on that, and you just hope he gets healthy through the offseason. Like this is another thing, and I really hope he's healthy going into the season because if he's not, you start the season with basically like Cooper Flag with some good role players, but like Flag is in the focus of your team for sure. It's a very different team than if it's Anthony Davis at full strength coming back, feeling motivated.
I mean, this won't be a good team if AD's hurt to start the season. Like it just won't be. That's just the truth. So I mean,
they'll be competitive, I think. But it'll be one of those things where you're competitive until the last 5 minutes, and then games get blown because who's going to step up in that moment? Who takes pressure off of who? Because Anthony Davis would take pressure off of Cooper Flag, take pressure off of D'Angelo Russell.
I just I mean, knock on wood. I don't know what. I'm not like you said. I'm not a doctor. I don't. What could?
I'm not a doctor, so
I forgot I had this one.
I don't know.
It's amazing.
What could happen for him to not be ready by training camp? Like from everything I read,
with the eye.
Everything I read, and people were saying that this is like kind of like what you were saying, a pretty straightforward procedure that you recover from like kind of quickly.
Well, yeah, and we have months, right? It's July, August, September. I mean, we got a couple months.
Yeah,
maybe
So I'm not being putting that
10 weeks.
I'm not putting that energy in the universe. He'll be back, and
and the reports.
You don't know what my prediction is? We'll start the season, or we'll get to training camp. I'll be like, oh yeah, remember that eye surgery? Like that'll just be one of those things.
It's gonna be. Oh yeah. It's going to be a footnote on the Anthony Davis story for the Mavericks. I mean, the Shams report specifically says he is expected to be healthy for next training camp. So, great. I mean, and that's so. I guess we learned something. It changes not that much. Maybe changes my respect for him, right? Like that he played through something else through all this and through last season.
I just wonder how it happened. If maybe
he got smacked in the head a bunch.
He got smacked in the head, yeah. But I'm wondering when did they decide? Like, all right, maybe we should look into this. You know, if it was just like this lingering eye pain, and then they were like, all right, maybe there's something more to this than we thought, or did they know and they're like, hey, you're gonna have to get surgery on this at some point, and then this was just when they hammered it out? Like, I'm interested by that.
If I was really good at this job, I would come out and be like, Nico Harrison putting the players on the line with the training staff that wasn't ready and prepared, that wasn't qualified. You should start going off.
But you don't have to do that. They're already doing that on Twitter.
I mean, they're good at their jobs. You get paid now on Twitter. The real question in all this for Anthony Davis, slightly. Does he need to go goggles? Do we need full Kareem goggles now?
Goggles. What about just like an eye patch?
Do they have clear eye patches?
I was just thinking that. Just like, I just need to protect this one eye. Can you give me a clear eye patch?
A clear eye patch?
I'm sure they could invent one.
Someone is listening to this show being like, did these guys just talk about an eye for
Hey, somebody in my chat today said that Dwight Powell needs to teach the team how to take hits to the face safely. Like how quarterback coaches will bring in baseball players to teach quarterbacks how to slide. They need Dwight Powell. 30 minutes in the first practice of the season.
Take a hit to the face. Ryan Nemhard did mention, he's like, I know of Dwight Powell from the Canada stuff. I haven't played with him, but I'm excited to learn from him, and that's probably one of the things that he was excited to learn is how to take a hit.
I wasn't expected to hear that. A Dwight Powell shout out from the rookies. It's like, yeah, I'm excited to play with Dwight.
Well, they're both team Canada.
No,
guys.
I know, but that would be hilarious if Flag said that. If Flag is like, I'm like Dwight Powell's a guy that I've looked up to for a long time.
Dwight was also working out in the corner during practice today. So
hey,
sometimes I'm like, does he live here? You just come
Face
in
of
and
the
he's
team
just,
in a lot of ways.
there.
What is it, fourth longest tenured player in the league? I think
the whole league.
Yep, something like that. It's like Steph, Draymond, Giannis, and Embiid, and him.
And Dwight Powell, who was in the Rondo trade.
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups all summer long, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out. It makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I am part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks.
Jalen Lott is an Oregon Duck. No other way to put it. Whether you watch his film, don't watch his film, read the recruiting ranking, read the scouting report, you're going to come to the same conclusion. This is one of the best athletes in the class of 2026, and he picks the Ducks over a pretty impressive other trio of schools, might I add. One thing that I've always looked at when setting my expectations for a recruit, there are a lot of different factors. Position he plays, how urgently Oregon needs him to progress to become a starting player in his career, what his profile is, what his highlights look like, scouting report, all that stuff. I look at who else was in the final group of schools going after him. And when you've got a Final Four, as Jalen Lott did, that includes Oregon, Texas, which is the state he's from, USC, and LSU, it raises the bar a little bit in my head, and I go, okay, this seems like he's that sort of guy. In the 24/7 composite ranking, he's a top 50 player in the country, number 5 athlete, top 10 player in the state of Texas. This is a great recruiting win for the Ducks, who have shown a propensity over the years to recruit any state in the country at any point in time for just about any position group. And for Oregon to go out and get this sort of win is a really good sign. Oregon hasn't won every single one of these battles this year. Brandon Arrington was a projected two-way player, is a 5-star projected two-way player from the state of California, went to Texas A&M. Well, Texas A&M wasn't a finalist here for Jalen Lott, but Oregon goes into the state of Texas and gets him to commit to the Ducks. So great poll for Dan Lanning. Will Stein tweeted out a GIF where he was excited. I think it had Will Ferrell in it or something or other. But it's just, I like seeing that sort of energy. It's fun. It's good. Coaches in around it. Kids clearly like that sort of stuff. By the way, the recruiting concerns, I think we can put those to bed. Oregon's back inside the top 10, number 9 nationally in the 24/7 rankings. Lott comes in with a composite ranking of just a shade over 97, which is bordering on 5-star status. So Ross Douglas and Rashad Samples reportedly involved here, as you would expect. Samples has got ties to Texas. He was big, even though he's the running backs coach, in landing DeCorian Moore from Duncanville High School. And for Oregon to be able to go and get a kid from Panther Creek in Frisco, Texas, pretty impressive pull there by the Ducks on the trail. So this is another great pickup for Ross Douglas, Oregon's new wide receiver coach, who's in his first full season at the role and has some pretty darn big shoes to fill, and Jalen Lott can really help do that. 6 foot, 176 pounds, probably going to play receiver. According to Gabe Brooks over at 24/7, if he were to play both ways, it would be a little bit more of a development, whereas immediately he has a better chance to make an impact at wide receiver. The interesting part of that, though, to keep an eye on here with Jalen Lott, is that going into next season, Oregon's wide receiver room, I mean, the running back room is good. The wide receiver room is stupidly stacked with young talent. Now, we don't know who's going to transfer out. Let's say, for instance, the only player not there from this year's room is Malik Benson because he's out of eligibility. I mean, let's presume for a moment that Evan Stewart comes back. I don't know how likely that is. It's definitely possible. And if he does, you also have to remember that Gatlin Bair's coming into the room next year. A 2024 5-star recruit serving a 2-year LDS mission. Next spring or fall will be his first time in an Oregon uniform. You've got DeCorian Moore. You've got Jeremiah McClellan, Jurion Dickey, former 5-star. Kyler Casper could be going into his final year of eligibility. And we'll see how much experience he's able to get this year on the field. So I wonder. I wonder about that when considering, I had somebody ask me, hey, does he project more as a receiver, defensive back? Will he really play both ways? Is he a Travis Hunter type? I'm hesitant to compare anybody to Travis Hunter. The frame for Lott compared to Hunter is similar, and he is listed as an athlete rather than just as a wide receiver. I think everybody pretty clearly sees a lot more as a wide receiver. Hunter, by the way, was 6'1", 165, and was also the number 1 overall player in the country, not just athlete or receiver. He was the number 1 overall prospect in the 2022 recruiting class. So I think you can compare guys stylistically and say that Lott's athleticism, which is immense, could certainly translate to either side of the ball. But then you go to that side and go, well, I don't know, where would he play immediately in the secondary? Who's he pushing out? The highlights that he's got on his film are at the outside cornerback position. Well, Oregon's got a bunch of those. Is he going to come in and just beat Naeem Offord out for playing time, or Ife Obadegwu, or Jalil Florence if he comes back? Like, I don't know, a lot of options. This is a good problem for Oregon to have, by the way, that I could look at a guy like this and say, I don't know where he can make an early impact because there's so much talent. Is he as talented as any of them? Pretty much, yeah. Like, his athleticism is crazy. The straight line speed, I think, is where he really, really shines. And he's not a super big guy. He does remind me a little of Evan Stewart, body frame wise. He looks like him a bit on tape. They run a little bit differently, and I think Stewart is a more complete route runner. But Lott is a guy who shows the ability to take the top off of defense. He's got awesome ball skills, and he can make plays around the line of scrimmage as well. You get him the ball in space. He's the sort of guy who you could give the ball to on a pop pass, screen, bubble, anything like that that's, within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage or so. He's going to excel in that sort of role and also be a burner that can go over the top. Oh, yeah, Brian's thoughts on Jalen Lott and his film tomorrow on the show, along with everybody else Oregon's been getting recently. We'll get plenty of Brian tomorrow on the show, I promise. The one thing that, I felt like wasn't showing up a lot on some of his highlight reels were intermediate routes. He's got a couple, but mostly and maybe it's because that's how he just wanted to package the highlights and that's the most exciting and whatnot. But it's a lot of deep shots, and it's a lot of him catching the ball, making guys miss, and then showing the straight line speed. You give this guy a crease, he's gone. He is absolutely gone. Kind of a Devin Allen type. Devin Allen, but more refined at wide receiver is what I see here with Jalen Lott. And there's a guy who was a Texas 4A silver medalist as a junior in the high jump, going 6'10", and the long jump, 7.25. Yeah, like athlete is the correct term. I think he's more receiver, but maybe Oregon wants to develop him, have him go both ways, Charles Nelson style. I don't know. We will see.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Look, they're saving you money already.
Jared Goff is talking about his ex again, questioning the Rams' maturity. We are starting today with former Rams quarterback, current Detroit Lions quarterback, Jared Goff. And Jared Goff is speaking about his ex again. Jared Goff is still talking about a trade that went down in 2021. Now, a new season of Netflix documentary Quarterback Season 2, produced by the great Peyton Manning. Jared Goff is one of the quarterbacks that's featured in it, and he called it a blindside when he was talking about the trade that sent Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks to the Detroit Lions in exchange for Matthew Stafford. And then he doubled down on it. He took it to another level when he essentially said that the Rams were immature about the whole situation. Here is the direct quote from Jared Goff. Quote, I would say about 30 seconds after that phone call, when McVay told me I was traded, it was on Twitter. You feel like you've been betrayed or like you're not wanted. And I think for me, ultimately, it was the fact that there was not a conversation had and there wasn't like a, hey, we're thinking of moving on type thing. There was nothing. You wish that it wasn't such a blindside and that there was some sort of maturity, I guess, to have that conversation and to be able to let me know what was going on and how things went down and why this is happening. So he doesn't use the word immaturity, but he questions their maturity, saying that there should have been some sort of maturity, as if Les Snead or Sean McVay or anyone in the Rams organization owed him the heads up saying, hey, Jared, we are going to be trading you. Hey, Jared, we're looking at some external options. Well, my question to Jared Goff is, what kind of world were you living in? Speaking of being blindsided, were you blind to what happened in 2020? Because in 2020, Jared Goff did not have himself a good season. Jared Goff did not put up the kind of season that the Rams were hoping that he would to get them over the hump. The goal was always the Super Bowl for Sean McVay and Les Snead. Anything else was going to be a colossal failure. And in 2020, he did not look good. He played in 15 games that season, threw for 3,952 yards, but 20 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. And what happened towards the end of that season, Jared? What happened was you were pretty much benched by John Wolford at the end of that regular season. And the only reason you got back in the mix as a starter was because John Wolford suffered a head injury in the Rams wildcard game against the Seattle Seahawks. So they gave you big money and you were replaced by John Wolford, and then it comes as a shock that the Rams are trying to upgrade? What are we talking about here? And you look at the Rams from this, they don't owe him anything. The Rams didn't owe Jared Goff a heads up. They're trying to do something that rarely happens in this league. We talk about it on this show a lot. Everyday listeners will know. It's very difficult to acquire a quarterback that is top tier. A top 5 to 10 quarterback is very difficult to get your hands on outside of hitting on one in the draft. So the Rams were trying to be the exception to the rule and get a Matthew Stafford for a Jared Goff, also including the first-round picks. So why would they tell you? If they tell you, that can't help them in any way, shape, or form. Because the person that you should have got communication from, that should have let you know this was a possibility, was your agent. So if you feel blindsided, that's because your agent is not being realistic. And yes, a lot of these players, they have yes men's and sycophants around them that are telling them everything they want to hear. So they like to massage their egos, right? But in this case, the writing was on the wall. And the truth of the matter is the Rams wanted Jared Goff to work. They traded up lots of draft capital to get him at number 1 in 2016. But they clearly felt like this was not going to work. The Rams-Jared Goff relationship was like a dude getting engaged to their high school sweetheart or their college sweetheart. And it was a long, drawn-out engagement where a lot of great times, you're young and fun, you have some great moments, but ultimately, you don't put that ring on it. And it falls out and it crumbles at the end. The Rams didn't put a ring on it. They put a ring on it with Matthew Stafford, and Matthew Stafford got them that ring that they were so desperately trying to win for so many years with Jared Goff and ultimately failed each time. So, look, this is a situation where Jared Goff needs to get over it. He really, really does. I mean, if Jared Goff had just played average, just C plus maybe, they probably win the Super Bowl in 2018, but he was bad. So, hey, look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, the truth of the matter is the Rams, they are in the business of trying to put together the best roster that can compete for a title. And unfortunately, they didn't view you as the guy that get them over the hump. And guess what? They were right. They were absolutely right. If I want Jared Goff in this situation, I'm not talking about this because the more you talk about it, the more if I'm a Detroit Lions fan, I'm like, dude, like, get over your ex. Like, Jared Goff is that dude who gets, like, all hyped and ready to go to his high school reunion with his new wife to try to get back at his ex, and he shows up and his ex is, like, with a supermodel, right? It's like, hey, like, the Rams are fine. They ended up on the winning side. So the more you bring this up, the more it makes the Rams look like they made the right decision. And if I'm a Lions fan, I'm like, dude, like, why are you so obsessed with your former team? So to me, if I would move on from this, if I'm him, and look, on top of everything else, he should be happy. He got $135 million, and he got in a situation where Detroit Lions fans are constantly chanting, Jared Goff, Jared Goff. They like him there. They didn't love him in LA because he didn't win. Okay? In Detroit, yeah, winning's nice. They'd love to win a Super Bowl, but they're the Lions, right? They're a perennial all-time losing football team, right? I mean, that's just that. Let's be honest. They've been better lately, but the Lions, they don't have a Super Bowl, right? So they're one of those all-time loser franchises that just, look, I mean, it's not a slight to them. Great fan base, great city. They love their team, but the truth of the matter is the Lions fans aren't going to be as desperate for a Super Bowl as Rams fans in this ownership. So be content there. Like, if you don't win a Super Bowl for that franchise, yeah, it will be a disappointment, but you also get a lot of credit for kind of revitalizing and bringing that team back and making them relevant. Goff doesn't win a Super Bowl in LA. He's a forgotten footnote and considered to be a bust for this team as far as kind of what they were hoping for him. So I don't know what he's so upset about. I mean, if I'm the Rams, I definitely take this as a shot. I mean, I don't know that Goff really truly understands what he means by calling them mature. I mean, I just think that for him to say that they owed him something
when, hey, he was looking for better, the Rams looking for better, and they got better. So, yeah, I mean, I've kind of supported Jared Goff, but after kind of hearing this, it really makes me think like, dude, like you really put on record that you think that the Rams handled your situation poorly, and that can't be going on very, very well and being taken very well by the Rams brass, Les Snead, Sean McVay, and company.